Hey there, Shopomaniacs. You're listening to another episode of Shop Talk Show, podcast all about front-end web design development. I'm Dave Rupert. With me is Chris Coyer. Hey, Chris, how are you?
All right.
Do you think our tagline needs some updates, or we're good? We're still talking front-end web design development. Last 10 episodes have been up about
Did
AI.
you already say it? Because
I did.
It just whizzes by my brain. Front-end design and development. Yeah, I think that's okay. Or maybe just,
development. Less design these days, but once upon a time we had actual designers on the show.
Yeah. I mean, I still fantasize about it and think of myself in that way. Because I just saw some like meta conversation today of people be like, where do you go? Kind of in the, it's not that Dribble's dead. It's just weird these days. It just doesn't have quite the same inspirational modern feel to it or something.
When it became a place to get a job, it shifted radically. It turned into this, like, I don't know, just like these fantasy showcases sort of, it was interesting. So
yep. And then so it was like, I still think of it like once in a while I still go there and then I'll type in. I always never get quite what I want because sometimes I'm looking for a pattern. Like usually it's something like a menu or a footer or a drop down or a card or a listing of blog posts or something. Like I want something boring like that, and then I want to see like a amazing take on it. But that seems hard to find because the search terms are so boring that you type in that you get unrelated stuff. And I kind of can't blame them because we've faced that same kind of issue at CodePen.
It's hard. I have an issue. So I had that. You might remember that blog post I wrote about UI as a function of states, and it's just like a big super list, a mega list of all the crap, all the states that are in UI.
It seems like such a simple concept, right? You're like, oh, there's the UI has a bit of state to it, and then it looks the way that state needs to look, and you're like, oh, well, what composes that state then, Dave?
Yeah, well, here's 9,000 things, and you think like, oh, component state is button open, or whatever. And it's like super way more than that,
Right. That's your state. That's like, which can be complex in its own right.
For sure, yeah.
But then there's just other state that is intrinsic to the platform, how wide the browser window is, for example.
Yeah. And so I have a few blog posts that are just these mega lists. Like, one is like all the things you need to make a design system, and it's just like, all the things you need to start a startup, and it's just, like all these stuff, like these like mega lists. And I'm kind of like, how can I present this in a way that is interesting, more than just a list of items, And so I've been like doing explorations, like mind maps and graphs, and do I do like a full infographic kind of thing, or a subway map, or what do I do to like make this all work? It's really, I don't know. I would like to not just put like lists of text on the internet, but maybe that's my V0 of the post, So I'm just kind of like, there's just so much you got to do. Like, I don't know. It's stalled out like more than one post just because I'm like overthinking, like, how can I make this compelling, And I've tried to look on Dribble and on CodePen, like, what are cool lists, like, but you might be surprised to find out not many people are riffing on the list format. So it's like, how do you make it?
Are they not? Is there really none? Or are they just hard to find?
I think they're just hard to find. Yeah, like how do you make a mega list compelling? And I think I'm maybe, we had mega drop downs as a thing, right? And there's lots of mega drop down solutions, sort of, but or a mega footer. But what about a mega list? That's what I'm into. Yep. That's what I'm looking for.
God, I just thought of it this morning. There's all these things that your brain gets cooking on stuff. I think it was Steam. Steam's I don't even use it, but it's the thing where you buy video games, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people use it, mostly well regarded, I think, especially because they have sales and stuff. You can buy anything from AAA games to indie games, right, on it? So a lot of people have a lot of games, which leads to mega list territory, does it not?
For sure, yeah.
Right? And then, like, where do you put them? Because I think, not to diminish anything here, but like a junior designer might be like, well, these games have great thumbnails, so obviously you do a grid of thumbnails, and that's that's your dashboard of Apple does it. There's a grid of icons on your page. Maybe you can drag them around. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like they generally do that, although, like I said, as a non-user, and it's more of a sidebar. It's more of a Spotify, Slack-like experience where there's a main sidebar of games.
Yeah, and you maybe get like a favicon size, sort of thumbnail in that list, but it's mostly just a list of names, like games you have downloaded, games you own, and games on your wish list. So,
yeah. I just remember looking at it and being like, that's an interesting place to put. That's kind of the primary navigation that a user cares about when they log into this platform. Mostly they're just trying to get to the game that they already have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but they don't do that. They put you in the shop first. That's the log-on experience,
I'm sure. But once you're on this, once you have this kind of sidebar, it does kind of seem like not a bad way to, especially if there's any kind of searching and filtering, which would not take that much UI to implement. It's like kind of a not bad way to do it. I don't think that helps you necessarily.
Yeah, because mine have like hierarchies, but maybe that is a good place to start. Maybe it is more of like I do a list. It's like a vertical tab panel kind of thing, and then you have to click through each one to figure out what's inside or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Is that...
Or they're all expanded by default but are collapsible. What I did notice that your mind map thing did kind of categorize them, so colors would help. Just use the colors that you already have. Like there's the
kind
purple ones over
colors,
here. Yeah. That would be okay. And having some scrolling to it might actually help emphasize your point. It's like, look at how many there are. You have to use your scrolling to even see them all.
To catch up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's V0 is like a section color. Like I have the red section, like a little border on the left or something. That sort of just hints like these things are related, and then maybe that's. Oh, yeah, that's maybe a good
also
situation.
Using our brains here, I think, is pretty clutch. Like understanding what the desires are, what you're trying to communicate, that kind of thing. And it might not be the worst, especially once you've used your brain somewhat and have some goals and desires, that it's not the worst thing to try AI for. And just throw it all away if it's junk. But it might just be 5 minutes of effort. It might be the kind of thing Bolt.new is good at. It might be, just because then you're like going from the prompt to the visual output quicker, which I think if you're just going right to ChatGPT or Claude or something, that you might get code or something, but they're not producing the visual output, and then there's that extra step that might be annoying.
Yeah, well, I thought too, like not that. Is there better groupings? I have my own groupings, but sometimes, there's probably a better grouping of a list of things, So
perhaps.
I don't know. Yeah, no. I mean, like that's back to the whole like I want it to be the AI or whatever to be like a thinking tool, not a doing tool. So
yeah, that's what I mean. Use your brain first,
so
and then
see if there's
do it.
But.
And it doesn't have to be like use your brain in which to craft the perfect prompt. Like I would almost like keep your AI out of your brain for a minute. Like don't, like maybe you won't need it at all. Maybe me and you just talking and using our brains could land on a pretty darn good solution and not have to touch it. And I think that's fine too.
Yeah, I actually had a blog post. Mouth blog time. Mouth blog. Chris, you have fun with that one. I was, where was it? I was posting an image, a GIF on Blue Sky, and Blue Sky does that whole AI autocomplete thing, And I was posting a GIF of Hayden Christensen and
wait, 1 second. What? Blue Sky does AI autocomplete,
or like AI alt text or whatever. Sorry, AI alt text. Like
you paste an image and you forget to put alt text, it just puts it in for you.
Or if you use their like little GIF embed tool, it'll like add alt text. So it's probably pre-generated at some point, or I doubt they're doing it on the fly. Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Anyway, so I did this GIF about it was Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman from the movie Star Wars Episode 2, where Hayden Christensen goes like, I don't like sand, right? You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a very quintessential scene setting up the worst lines of dialogue ever to exist in a movie. You know, it's itchy. It doesn't make me feel good. You know, so I put this up there, and the AI, you know, auto completed it. I'm going to tell you what the AI said. Are you ready? So
Yeah, I'm ready.
We all remember the cinematic scene from the movie, right? You know. And it says, the descriptive alt text says, a man and a woman are sitting next to each other, and the woman is saying, I don't like sand. And that's wrong. Like, it is on multiple levels. Like, it's not the woman saying it. Ta-da. Like, you failed that one. Okay. Nice try, Chad. And then it's like, it's not just a man and a woman. It's Anakin Skywalker and Queen Amidala. Like, that's like, very like, or Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman. It's like, that's very important context to the GIF, right? Like, I don't just paste pictures of women saying I don't like sand. That's like not, you know, maybe it is sometimes that, but like the context is missing, right? Like, and that's what's interesting about these machines. Sorry, I don't mean to make this the AI.
It's
shit,
like hard
but
to blame it, right? Because how would it know what a character in a movie's name is, right?
Right.
Like,
that's.
but you're saying like like nothing is almost better than wrong.
Well, sort of. Yeah. It's like it misses the context, right? And alt text is all about context. Like, how do you provide good context for why this image is in here? And like, I just, you know, I was even like, you know, thinking like, you know, like cavemen, right? Like, or like language exists to provide context. I feel like, you know, like a caveman might have gone, arg, you know, but like after like 6 or 7 times, people are like, okay, Grog, you said arg, but what kind of arg? You know, like I need to know, bud. Like, I can't just jump up every time you say arg, you know?
Right. I'm sure arg is, you know, they can tell the difference pretty quickly between like saber-toothed tiger arg and sex arg.
Yeah,
you know,
they probably came up with some conventions, some context in like the very early parts of like speech, right? So anyway, I'm just like, it's just interesting that the machines don't have context, and then we have to give context to the machines, right? Like, how many times do you read like, oh, you'd get better AI if you did more prompting and gave it all the context in the world? And it's like, yeah, okay. I just wanted to have the context, like my files in my repo tell me how to finish this line of code or whatever, you know, to the standard that we are setting, you know, like it's just it's a bit of a beast, you know. I think about that word context means a lot for me right now. So it's just like, we have to give the machine context if you want to use this stuff, but then.
So that was there
really
some
just
OCR stuff in there too. That's one of the things that it occurs to me is that, like, let's say we decide collectively that all AI described images is like not good enough because it will never have the context. So like, let's not do that. Perhaps like make the opposite choice that Blue Sky has. And then part of my brain goes like, well, except for OCR. Like, what if an image is just a bunch of text? Like, can it please just say what the text is as the alt experienced
that
instead?
would be cool.
Especially if it's so obvious, like it's just a screenshot of Notes app or whatever, like it's so common. Except for that it just failed in this exact circumstance that you just described, where it did put the text that was present in the image, it just described it to the wrong person and whatever, right? Didn't it fail at that?
Yeah. It just didn't do it. Like, or it generically applied a man and a woman labels to the future Darth Vader. You know what I mean? Like, just miss it. It just misses.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if you know, a deeply AI person, perhaps even biased towards AI, what would they say, Dave? Would they say, well, it's early days, brother. Like, this stuff gets better by the minute. It'll be, before you know it, it's going to describe the hell out of that image.
It's going to have every movie ever made in its brain, in its positronic brain.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess if I was a betting man and we're talking tens of years, I'd say that's probably true.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. All right. I think, I don't know. I think
it doesn't mean it's okay right now. I feel like Jeremy Keith is famous for saying that. He's like he's pretty hard line against a lot of this AI stuff, and he says, well, if you're optimistic towards the future of AI, that it's I think I'm getting this a little wrong perhaps, but the idea is that it's all the more reason to not use it now, to force the next generation. If you think the next generation is going to be so good, force them to get there sooner than later, rather than validating the current crop of tools and their problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that it's tough. I mean, I think like, will it get better? I'm sure to some degree. I think, we've seen a bit of an icing on the like scale of how quickly it grows or gets faster and better or whatever. But anyway, I don't want to make this the AI show. Is there other stuff going on in tech? No? Okay, cool.
No,
Back
but
to
I want to do it for one more minute so that we don't have to circle back to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting enough. I don't know. I don't want to.
You asked what would I expect it to do? I don't know. I mean, I think like, a GIF of somebody saying I don't like sand would be actually better than what came up, or something like that. If it
like the title of the something, yeah,
yeah,
maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. It's that's a classic that comes up in workplaces of all discussions of all the. If you're like, how do I say it? Like, if you're going to criticize it, it's better to have an alternative. That like it's a bummer to just be like, this sucks is like not useful, but sometimes it just has to be. But,
yeah.
Like you're allowed to, especially if it's harmful, because then you're saying this sucks because harm.
Yeah, I think my like general thesis is I think AI for alt text will not meet the needs it needs to because of the context requirement, Even like how you use an image on a page, like depends, like, is it, if I am showing a picture of a beautiful beach in Bali, it means different things on a yoga website and a Bali tourist website and a poem about beaches. You know what I mean? Like, it means different things. So like,
it truly does.
So like, you have to just kind of think about the context that's surrounding it, not just the context inside the image. But so I think
it's also kind of you're on a freaking travel website for Bali, and you come across an image and it says a beautiful beach in Bali. Like, what do you think is going to be in that image?
Yeah. I mean, it might as well just not. It could even be empty in that situation because. Like,
unless it says like free Orange Julius is on the beach Tuesday at 3 p.m., then I need to know that, and then the OCR is what I want.
Yeah, then I need to know that. And so I feel like my general thesis is AI for alt text is not sufficient. However, I'm going to put a big caveat. I think like there should be tools for non-sighted users or whoever needs alt text to get more context out of an image. Like if somebody gives bad alt text, like image or a screenshot, they, non-sighted users should be able to grab that image and say like, dude, tell me about, somebody didn't label this image correctly. What is it? What's in it? I feel like that would be a helpful thing. Like I see it as like a accessibility tool for people who want to get more. Does that make sense? Like, tell me more about this.
It absolutely does. Well, here's another. I'm going to throw one at you because this is, while we're on it, this is a fascinating idea. And there's an Eric Bailey blog post from, I don't even know when he published it, but he was addressing it very interestingly. This have you heard of this? The idea that you could put alt text right in the JPEG itself or the PNG or any image format. You don't have to put it in the HTML because it's baked into the JPEG itself, which is a chin scratchy moment for a lot of us, right? The first time you hear that, I think, maybe the 10th time you hear that, you're like, huh, why not? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that mean that this image that I've produced can never fail? Wherever it travels, it will have the alt text forever. Now, and then Eric goes, admits that it's a chin scratchy, interesting kind of moment, except for that, the big C word there that you've said a million times this time. So, like, could you imagine the same image used in two different blog posts with two different bit of text that would choose different alt text because the context in both posts is different? And when it's baked into the image, then perhaps you don't have that ability to change it. Or even if you do, because I could easily imagine that the alt text in the HTML would override the one that's in the image.
Yeah.
But maybe you just wouldn't do it, particularly if this idea spreads, the amount of people handwriting alt text is already low and would plummet even further, you know?
Yeah, no, you would just
guilty of it,
assume it works, right? You would assume it exists.
Right.
And so you'd be like, and, you know, to some degree, I do want that, like Giphy or whatever. It's like, I don't want to have to describe every GIF from Giphy every time, you know, or whatever, if I'm just posting a goof, you know? But like, you know, if everyone, you have these repositories of images, yeah, like, you know, I think that's solvable. I think the other, you know, the part that got me in Eric's post was like the malice, you know, like,
yeah, you put some horrible crap into the alt text of an image that's not seen by the bulk of people because that's the
buy
nature of
FIFA
it.
coin 2025. Buy visit my website www.buttphotos.com. You know, like that would cause.
Well, there's spam, and there's also like genetically inferior human present in this photograph or whatever. You know?
For sure. Yeah, there's extremely bad stuff. Yeah.
Right, and of course there's bad stuff, but this is like hidden to most people, bad stuff, yet still spreads.
I think
whatever.
About too, like performance, right? Like what's every performance nerd going to tell you? Don't serve that. Make it an AVIF and strip out all the metadata, you know? So like we're already stripping metadata, you know? I guess you could flag it or, you know, create a consortium to allow this AI alt text in the image, but
and these are interesting problems, and it's sometimes problems have solutions. So I wouldn't say that I'm 100% against this, because some of these things I can imagine, even just armchair reading it, can imagine ideation and solutions around it. So I'm not going to put myself in the anti-bucket here. It is interesting to me. But perhaps there are too many problems. And if that was decided as well by a consortium of smart people, I would accept that. All right, so to drag us, you know, to conclude the AI section, again, I do think it's relatively interesting and worth not ignoring. Is there's been some discussion about AI browsers, which I think is interesting because partially I think, oh God, I roll century. Oh, of course. Yeah, feed me a browser. You know, like the AI's getting smashed and everything else. And not to mention, every time we've seen it, it's been absolutely yawn-worthy or boring. Now, Arc is obviously part of this discussion. They made a browser, and in my opinion, as painful it is for me to say, because they annoy me with their turning their backs on it in a way. Not really, but they just don't. It's not as exciting as it once was. Arc is an amazing browser. I cannot get the hell away from it. I love it. And
Arc is great, and they deflated their own balloon, man. It's just they're like, by the way, we don't work on Arc anymore. And it's just
we want to make a new browser. We think it's too. I think they said it's just too niche or something. It's too power usery or it's something. Despite insanity growth,
right?
What?
But they're like, it's never going to reach 1 billion
and
people.
Can't you involve the one you already have? I don't understand. But some people did really like the AI features. That was one of the ways that they tried to monetize the browser. Is they made it, they packaged them all up together, and you want them, you pay for them, kind of thing. They called it Max as part of Arc, and I literally disliked every single one of them. I just couldn't. I didn't like anything.
Renaming
and I'm not even
tabs was
anti-IA.
kind of okay, but it was not. Yeah.
Yeah, I do rename my tabs. I rename every pin tab because I have my own little way of doing it, and I really like that. But not AI, and the ones that automatically did it, not my favorite either. I really hate it when I rename my downloads. I don't need extra features, whatever. If you like them, whatever. I'm not trying to yuck your yum, but it didn't work for me in that way. But so all of a sudden, that's my main entry point into put AI in the browser. And now we're seeing a bit of a race for it because they've said, you know, we're going a little heads down, I think, on a more mass appeal AI browser just because they see that train a coming. And in that kind of way, I don't really blame them. Why that can't be a continuation of the excellence that is Arc, I don't understand, but whatever, you do you. Now, there's been rumors forever that OpenAI is doing this. I don't know that they've said anything that could be incorrect, but I think there's been a number of hires and stuff that point to the direction of OpenAI is probably going to do a browser.
Mm-hmm.
And the news broke just 2 days ago or something. The Perplexity, I think they broke their own news with the tweet with a really super duper duper generic screenshotty thing that they're going to do a browser. And it guess what? It's space themed like every other thing in the universe. Anyway, it's called Comet or something.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's absolutely no detail about it. So at least 3 AI-focused browsers coming. Okay, right? What do we think about that? Part of me is like, I absolutely can't blame them because there's like the jobs to be done concept of like users have something in mind that they're trying to do always, and then they use whatever tool is in front of them to do it. The tool generally for browsers is need to go look something up. Click browser icon, go do that thing. Like for the most of the world, the job to be done is I need to look something up. And the browser is the best way to like be frontline in the way of that query.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to make another website because otherwise the icon that they click is going to be Edge or Chrome or Safari or Firefox. And then they are the first line of look something up. Probably it's going to be in the main search bar of what that app is.
Yeah,
That's not giving these AI companies that first query that they want. And if they had a browser, it would be the first query. And that's what they're doing here, I think. Plus, they have all the evidence in the world that Chrome has done it in the past. Chrome, in a sense, pulled off what still to this day feels amazing to me. Google doesn't really make a computer. They do these days because there's like a Chromebook or something. Maybe your kid has one. I don't know. But they don't make computers the way that other companies do, like Apple, right? They obviously make computers. Apple wants you to use Safari. Safari's already installed. It's already in the dock. So they have some usage of Safari just naturally. So many people use it just because it's the one that comes on their computer. But Chrome, somehow, despite not really making a computer or operating system that they have control over that a lot of people use, aside from Android and stuff, which is huge, but I mean desktop or whatever, and especially during the beginning days of Chrome, somehow pulled off whatever it is, their 80-90% market share, despite that. And I could see OpenAI saying, like, if they did it 10 years ago, whatever it was, maybe we can do it too. I don't think it's going to be helpful for a company like OpenAI to get 0.002% market share with their browser. Or even Arc levels. Like, I don't think Arc is happy with their browser share, despite the fact that I think they should be.
yeah. It's only 200 million.
Yeah. Or whatever. But I think if these AI companies want to do it, like a little baby side project isn't going to be the thing. One of them's trying to like kind of win this, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious where it goes. I mean, I do. Yeah. I have questions. I just, so I use Bing and Edge. And so, like, occasionally, I'll do a query and then an AI gen will start happening. But, I'm just speaking from experience here. I usually beat the AI gen to the link I'm looking for. I don't sit around and wait for it to generate, So I just wonder how it's going to be, like, long term, just with given the limitation that AI takes time, So I'm curious how that goes. So,
Yeah, I think that they want it the other way. That you're seeing AI generated results first, and then if it needs to go scour the web for more information, then it will. I think that's very clear that that's what they would want.
Yeah,
and like from from their own business perspective, I understand that. Do I think that's great? I don't know. I don't know anymore because the alternative is Bing or Google or whatever, and those experiences have gone so downhill, in my opinion, that like, what do you want then? What is the best thing that could happen for a first query in a web browser these days. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you got options, so I'm going to ask, what are some cool websites, and see what I get. I get a Squarespace and a Reddit, and a picture of toilet paper for some reason. Paper toilet. Okay. All right. Looking interesting. Neil.fun and Dribble got on there. That's interesting. So,
what are some cool websites? It says
Yeah.
Squarespace, which is absolutely meaningless, all the way to Neil.fun, which is probably the best answer you could possibly get.
It's yeah. So it's funny, the twist there is, I don't know.
Yeah. How the hell did Squarespace get on there at all? They're not even
Yeah.
gunning for fun. They're gunning for need website, give us money, and you can have one. No shame. It's just there's fun isn't a part of it.
Yeah. I got some interesting ideas. I don't know. It's interesting. That's gonna be my.
All right. So there's this
my
other
test
meta
the waters
conversation
query,
about.
So.
Oh yeah, show me some fun website.
Yeah.
I wonder if mobile is a part of it or not. Have you heard there's a little bit of a meta conversation that's been lurking about just how bad the mobile web sucks? That's been a conversation for a long time because it's so it's such a embarrassment. I think there's probably a conversation happening on an airplane right now where one person doesn't really want to tell the other person what they do because they're a web designer, because the other person in the seat who's not a web designer is going to be like, ugh, you're responsible for this mess? Like it's embarrassing how awful mobile websites are.
How about on the count of 3, we say what the biggest problem is, okay, with mobile websites? Are you ready?
Oh,
you
yeah,
got your answer? 1,
Sure.
2, 3. GDPR
Overlays.
consent.
Yeah, we kind of said
okay.
the same thing in a way because those tend to be overlays,
Yeah.
depending on how big they are.
I'm so tired of reject all cookies. Like it's because the options they give you are allow me to track you on the internet or configure it all, and then it's I open configure it all, and then I have to now I'm configuring an app before I even read something on the page. It's stupid. The internet's broke.
I know that I'm going to repeat my controversial opinion about this, but I feel like there's the alternative is to do a great job, essentially write the equivalent of I very much care about user privacy and pinky promise to you that we're going to do the right things, and I have civil disobedience against showing the banner, so we're not.
Yeah. I mean,
Don't do that for real, because then you'll get sued and you can't blame me for that. Get sued, by who is another question, but it's probably happened.
I just think it's so much friction. I get that it's necessary. Europeans are already emailing me. I got people telling me there's a plugin that fixes that, and I understand that. But it's bad, and most people are just suffering. Your website's not loading because it's bad. The other thing is, we have put too many JavaScript farts in the engine, man. There's just way too much JavaScript on the mobile web. I feel it. I have an iPhone 13, low battery mode all the time.
Top 5, top 3 problems?
I think that's number 2 probably. Would be
number 2?
Yeah. I think, I think ads fits into that, I don't think ads have adapted to the mobile web. I think they're we need 5 ads on an article that's 2 screens tall, or whatever, and it's dude, mobile web ads should just be one good ad. That's all it can support. This whole I'm gonna do a full page takeover with ads on a phone. It just doesn't work.
No, they're all just different kinds of interruptions.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just say interruptions are the worst part, because it's well, that's all of it really. But
how often do you scroll and there's just 400 pixels of blank white space because something's loading in, and then you scroll past it and then it jerks back to some.
And then you're is it me because I blocked something? And then that's fine, I suppose. But is that really it or not? Or
yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the meta. The reason I called it a meta conversation is because that's the conversation. We all know that. And the meta conversation is that it doesn't have to. That's lurking in a lot of people's minds. Is there's no reason. There's no technological problem with the mobile web that makes it be that way. There might be the law. I mean, GDPR, it could be a counter argument there. But for the most part, the technology does not force the web to be as bad as that it is. And that if anything, the apps should be suckier than if there's a comparison happening between a company that offers a native mobile app and a website, the app should be the one that sucks probably. That was kind of Gruber's thing, and I've seen lots of agreement about it, even with people that generally don't agree with him. Yeah.
I didn't see that Gruber article.
I like it.
Look for it, but
I think it was kind of a while ago now, but the conversation's just been lurking. Yeah, I think that's interesting. You know, like because they're so rare, like you and I can make a mobile website that isn't awful all day long, and it's so rare in people's experience that they browse one.
Yeah.
That's not there. And I've always been like, well, it must be incentive based then, because people don't do things just randomly. Or at least they don't intentionally harm user experience just by accident. They do it for a reason. They do it because they think they have to. They do it because they think there's money there, or there is money there. You know, there's
right.
there's these market forces at work that make it the way it is. It is not random. That's not how the world works.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I think, you know, I will give Ethan Marcotte credit for responsive web design. Fine, I'll do it. I'll give him credit. I'm the guy giving Ethan credit.
Ooh,
for
spicy.
it. Yeah. I think, there was a point where everyone was making like M.dot sites and website, desktop sites, and trying to like, under the guise of like, you can make it even better, M.dot, and it could be super fast and super good, and we built a couple of those, and it was cool, and I used jQuery Touch and stuff like that, I think responsive design does make it harder because people just kind of like, what? I have to make a mobile website? But like, I think it at least solves the problem of like, you don't have to switch apps. Like you can just build one thing, I think that's a huge, like you don't have to build 10 things. You just have to build one thing. And I think that's a big thing. That's a big, awesome thing. I just think, we aren't given the time or the allowance to pay attention to that small screen experience enough, And I think even if you made your assumptions at the big screen, the result at the small screen is not good. I have that problem on my side. I pull it up on my phone. I'm like, ugh, like I thought I did better than this, and it's just because I, wasn't developing an iOS simulator, or whatever. Like I probably should more often, So
yeah, I've definitely had periods where I kind of liked it and then kind of didn't like it. I have this problem now. The version of my homepage now has I always like the concept that the homepage is the about page for a personal website, or even a lot of times for a business website. Like, why do I have to click about? Obviously, I want to know about your company or yourself. Like, geez. Like, what's the homepage for if it's not that? So I made the homepage the about page, and it just says all the most important things about myself, and I like how it turned out. I think that's fine. If you don't know me, here's about me. And then that's on the left, and then on the desktop, and then a list of blog posts on the right. Just because I'm like, yeah, I know that my site is mostly a blog, but that doesn't mean that people think of it as mostly a blog. They might come there for any number of reasons. So I try to split the middle, The problem is the default behavior of that then is that like when you break that grid down to display block, or you just make it a one column grid or whatever, that the about page stuff is first. So now like when I land on my own website, I'm like, it's not that I don't want that. It's just that it's always the same. And there's quite a lot of content before you get to anything that signals any semblance of freshness. And in previous designs, I managed to pull off kind of a 2-column look that did some about stuff and fresh blogish stuff, even on a portrait small screen. And I was like, ooh, God, I kind of nailed that, I think. And but that I've since lost it. And Just haven't dealt with it. Yeah. We should name that syndrome. Like don't like own website syndrome.
Yeah. Don't like own website? Call my phone number 555. I'm going to help you get out of website jail. Yeah, no, you're never going to be pleased with your own website. That's why they exist. But there is, but it's, what does Ethan call it? A worry stone or something? Yeah. So it's your little worry stone. You work on it when you don't want to think about anything else and make it a little better each time.
Yeah, until you throw it all away and
throw it away and start over. I know people who do that, and they do it pretty good. I think the next thing I'm going to do is that cool grid, the named grid parts. Ooh, yeah, that's going to be a cool thing I'm doing. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would. I just did mine recently, so I need to let it simmer. But I would like to lean in a little heavier to all the view transitions stuff and have a play with that, because I think we are, round one is over, where we all just put, view transition name on cards or headers or something.
Yeah,
but now it's time to,
get funky. Get funky. Mm-hmm. Get funky.
Right, and use those CSS hooks a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
D Scale writes in, I've been reading about scale recently in terms of making a scalable website or web app. Can you talk about the topic of scalability? Pick your favorite topic: scalable CSS, scalable traffic. What do you think? Scalable databases. What does scale mean to you, Dave?
Your website must have a good scale. And that's what I would say.
Musical scales,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I think about this a lot. Scalability in websites is, there's startup scalability, which is can it accept 100 billion users and at 80 billion connections per second. That's one form of scalability, is throughput and availability at load. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sure. That seems like starting at the top, baby. That's like the ultimate scalability, which probably a lot of us will never even think about.
Right. But, in a situation where I do have to think about that right now, and I have been in the past too, large pizza websites, et cetera. But, so like that's scale. And so, at some point, every kilobyte you add impacts sales. That's like, there's an old Amazon thing, WPOstats.com or whatever it is, where it's like 1%, 100 milliseconds was 10% of revenue or something like that. Like you're probably leaving a bunch of money on the table if like you're not scaling to meet the requirements.
So what's happening, the way scale factors in there is that like if your website scales poorly and the traffic goes up, that you're going to have performance and then reliability problems.
Yeah, your performance gets worse as load happens, because the 5 connections your server has to other clients or hosts start disappearing, and so now your website takes even longer to load and stuff like that. So, so your server can have X number of connections, so then you might have to stand up other servers to handle those connections and load balance those connections. It's a big deal. But so that's like one form of scalability. I would say there's other forms, just like, and I'd be curious what you think, Chris. Just like there's like if I write a line of code, is the next person who comes along going to understand it, or are they just going to delete it, or write over it, or mess it up and break something else? Like, I think there's this term of like human resourcing scalability. Like, can multiple people and teams and stuff work on something at the same time? I think that's another form of scale. Like, how many people can work on it simultaneously? Facebook famously, has like thousands of engineers, and they all work in one folder, and like there's tens of thousands of React components and stuff like that. So, that's like a form of scale. So Google is a mono repo too. Like Can you imagine?
Right, and in that case, a scalable choice you might make is we're going to try to break things into as small of files as we possibly can, because then the chances of conflict are high. It's one thing if you have, even if you had 5 people working, in the way that your architecture was is that you just have a script.js file. So one file, and all 5 people work in it. It literally will be a huge problem to do PRs, because every single PR will be a merge conflict because somebody else was working in it too, and Git sometimes can handle that well, but for the most part just says like, no, 2 people touched this, you got to figure it out. That's a difficult and error-prone way to work. It's going to slow everybody down. But if you just said, if you're going to work on a new component, you're going to make a new folder, you're going to name it something, you're going to put the relevant code for that component in that folder, that PR is going to be nice and clean and easy to read and not conflict with something else. That's a scalable choice you could make about the architecture of your application, you know?
Yeah. So I think those are like how many people can use it, and then how many people can author it successfully, you know, like without collisions and conflicts and slowdowns. Like that's like probably the 2 biggest versions of scalability.
Sure, there's cost as well. That's another one. So if what you're making choices to get this website online, and as it scales up or down, even like, can you find a way to kind of host it for free at the beginning? Great. Like that's a kind of a low scale choice that you could make, because scaling is, you know, you generally think about up, and that's a good way to think about it too. But starting as low as you can practically is good too. But if you start so low, does it mean that you have to make really difficult choices later about moving it? You know, you can pick a host that isn't particularly scalable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, like
you're going to have to pick up and move later, or a data storage choice that just becomes too expensive, and then the next choice is like, well, you're going to need to go to a hand-managed Postgres thing. That's going to become a really big, hard job because you didn't pick something scalable to begin with.
Yeah, and hopefully your scale problems match your income, like how much money the site's making. But you know, how many stories do we have of like, oh man, my Netlify or Vercel charged me $100,000 or whatever, you know, and it's like because they put a service function in a hot path and then they got on Hacker News or something like that, you know, and so tens of thousands, you know, it cost you 8 cents to build locally, and you're like, this is going to work forever. But then when people show up, the actual cost of a server went up immensely, and now the cost to move, you know, is also immense, you know. So yeah, I think
all
those
that
are
said,
things.
it doesn't mean that the correct way to do this always is to pick the most scalable possible choice from the first day you ever work on a project, because there are costs to that sometimes really scalable things are also very manual and difficult things to choose. It is not a mistake to pick more managed services or simpler technology in the beginning. The trick is like when to start thinking about those moves on the way up, and you cannot learn it.
No,
it's just
trial by fire, huh? Like only,
right?
Yeah,
I think only. Or like, you know, if the world was a better place where you could everybody. I don't know that it was like easier to live, you know, like I feel like it was possible in the past to like be an apprentice plumber for 12 years and like it's still cool. You still, you know, drove a Buick Skylark to work and lived in a 3-bedroom home on the outskirts of Texas where it was fine, you know?
Yeah.
That's harder now, but if you could be an apprentice DevOps person for 12 years, you'll probably learn these things without it being a disaster. But for now, it's got to be a disaster to learn.
Yeah, you'd learn under the cover of somebody who has experience, you know, and so we just don't have that really apprenticeship model anymore. So
I saw one the other day. Now, I don't think this may not map onto this perfectly, but there's a website called SILL, SILL, .social, And it's kind of the now I'm forgetting the name of the thing that it replaced. But you basically hook up your Mastodon and your Blue Sky, and then you get a little digest of what was the hottest stuff, kind of in combination of the two.
Oh,
so
interesting.
it's like you
Okay.
had 5 friends that all shared a link yesterday. You won't miss it because you'll get it in the little digest. And then you can like kind of click down into it and see what they said about it as well. Really nicely done kind of app. I happen to know the guy that did it, or we crossed paths, a decade ago in an interesting way, but that's neither here nor there. I think he's a pretty accomplished guy, probably a lot smarter than I ever will be, but still is kind of running the thing alone, and probably made some smart scaling choices early on to verify if this thing has any legs or whatever. But it had a kind of a little disaster the other week where some database thing went down and was unrecoverable. Now, SIL doesn't keep a lot of your data, so it's not like it lost a ton of interesting, but it lost your
Was that
a
the
lot of
Terso
stuff.
thing? Terso or something did that? Anyway, yeah. I heard about
Yeah, maybe it was.
something. Yeah.
But you had to kind of re-log in and connect your stuff again, and then you were good to go. But it's like that was probably a disaster in the disaster category. It had to do with scaling, so that
Well,
can
and you
happen.
don't think about it. You launch it and you have $8 whole in income from it. You're not thinking, dude, the next thing I need to do is like really intense backup structures. That's like, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
But next time he will. So next time
Perhaps,
it happens.
yeah.
So,
Now, you specifically mentioned scalable CSS. I don't know. It means the longer it's around, the more you need a system. Dave has said CSS kind of begs to have a system. Yeah, I think if you have one, it'll probably scale pretty darn far. With no system at all, just a little random, like, I don't know, I'll just give it this class name, and then I'll go into some file and just use that class name. That can last for quite a while, I'd say. But eventually it'll become a little annoying, especially as multiple people work on the code base, and you might just need to agree on some stronger conventions or a different set of tooling to scale it. But there's probably like pre that and after that in scaling CSS, and that's about it.
yeah. Well, and I mean, people give CSS a hard time for like, it's append only, blah, 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 So is JavaScript, but it's append only, but like the problem is usually not CSS. But I've come across 1 megabyte CSS files in my day, and boy, let me tell you about it. Once upon a time I was working for a large piece of company, and they had a 1 megabyte CSS file. I mean, that's a problem.
And it's in the head and it's blocking. That's always the nuance
Yeah.
of CSS, is that sure, it's usually not as big of a problem, but it happens to be this render blocking resource, which is a thing.
So you have to think about that. It will stop the page from loading. So you have to think about that. So, yeah.
Indeed you do. We'll do one last one before we kick it out here. Project manager ? Writes in.
Okay. I like it. I love it.
Doing front end for 8 years. Not really a rock star coder. Can figure stuff out, but just like whatever. I think that's cool when people self-identify as like, I'm mid.
Yeah. Yeah. B,
Yeah.
solid
High
B.
five. Yeah.
I'm a-
But he likes to I don't know why I said he. There's actually no. I used it because I flipped a coin. I do like discussing code architecture, though, and client requirements, and exploring different options and ideas, sort of like R&D. Is there a role for me out there? Could I be a project manager with technical insight? Is this even a thing? I actually know somebody that does this exact thing. They like tech well enough and went through a coding boot camp and do it, but more prefer the like early stage CTO-y kind of role of like, can we strategize how this is all going to come together? That's where I find my biggest value comes in. They are struggling a bit, so, not sure that there's heaps of roles out for that. I would guess that it's probably a little easier when you have a really like obviously demonstratable, I can solve these problems skill set.
yeah.
But maybe, I don't know.
I was going to say, I think, technical project managers are the best project managers. So like, definitely pursue that. Like,
There you go.
in my experience, like being able to be like, I can't do this because the database will crash is like super important. Like, because then the other person will be like, well, just make it not crash, you know, and you're like, no, it's 700 joins. I can't do it, you know, or whatever. Right. Like, I having a technical project manager is huge. So like if that's something you're interested in, I would definitely like pursue it or figure out a role that can work. I think like that's super, super valuable. You know, I think you have to make sure you're up on your tech. You know, you can get lapped out pretty quick and you're not just like, dude, what's popular in Hacker News? We're doing that. You know, I think that's going to exhaust some people. Hacker News driven or Reddit driven development. So you have to curb that. But I think, you know, I think that's something. There's this role of an architect that you could be, but that usually you have to like have proven chops, sort of.
I know that's what worries me
ship
about this.
a piece
is
of
a lot of times
architecture.
manager is placed slightly higher than the IC in the role, and you're like, my brain always like takes things to the logical conclusion. Kind of is that like, so what? Let's say you're like, yeah, I don't like coding so much. I don't like marketing or accounting or any of this. So I guess I'll just be the CEO. You know.
Yeah, I can't play guitar
like,
or drums, so I'll be the lead singer.
Yeah.
How's that? Yeah.
That's what makes this kind of hard to apply for a position and say, you know, how's your coding? Not great. I'll be your manager. Is hard for me, but it should be okay, especially because that's not true. You probably are a pretty darn good coder. You gravitate more towards project management. I would very much hope that you could find that role, and I think Dave is making a good point, and especially because you know that about yourself. Do not give up on that dream. Then, you know,
that's the part that like you have a unique thing in that you're like, this is the part of the job I like. You know, like how many project managers are like, dude, I love moving cards across the board, man. That's the best, you know, like you're like, no, I like this technical problem solving part and I can assist in that and then help plan that out and then deliver that. That's just what everyone wants to hear. So I think, you know, lean into that. Like just own up that you like this specific part of it, you know, like be like, I'm not trying to take anyone's job or anything, but this is a part I really thoroughly enjoy and I can insist in that, you know. I think you should chase it. So
chase it, PM.
Yeah. Good luck out there.
Absolutely. I'll
right.
wind her down, I suppose.
Yeah, we got a hard stop here. Thank you, dear listener, for downloading this in your podcatcher's choice. Be sure to shard it up and join us on the good ones, Blue Sky and Mastodon, and then follow us there for 4 posts a month this month in February. And then join us over in the Discord. That's where the party's happening. Patreon.com/ShopDogShow. Chris, you got anything else you'd like to say?
ShopDogShow.com.
ShopTalkShow.com.
.com.
ShopTalkShow.com.
.com.